Good morning, students. Welcome to Sai CA Coaching Center, and this is CA MS Swaminathan with you. Students, in furtherance to what we have learned till now, let us move on with the next part of the syllabus in today's session. Take another example as a small iteration, a variation of what we analyzed a little before, the rental example. For example, you are staying now in a house where you pay 25,000 rupees rent. You intend to shift to a new place. You have looked at the place, you're happy with it, which is going to cost you 38,000 rupees per month rent. Now, obviously, from a decision-making perspective, what would you say? The new house requires me to pay up 38,000 per month, but then the earlier house, if I had continued there itself, would have required me to pay 25,000, and therefore I am paying only 13,000 rupees per month extra, which is 38,000 minus 25,000. From a decision making perspective, by going to the new house, if you are able to earn more than the 13,000, then you say my incremental benefit is something which is higher than 13,000. My incremental cost was only 13,000, and therefore I will go ahead with the decision to extend it a little further. In the past, when I was staying in the old residence, I used to incur 25,000. I never used to earn anything. Now, by moving to the new house where I pay 38,000, I am incurring 13,000 extra. If I don't earn anything even from the new residence, my extra expenditure would be 13,000. But then, if out of my new house I am able to earn from that place 13,000 rupees per month, then what does it mean? My incremental inflows are 13,000, my incremental outflow is 13,000, net impact is zero, meaning though I actually pay 38,000 rupees as a new rent, revised rent, since I earn a fresh 13,000 per month, my net cash flow happens to be 25,000 only, even in the new house, which was the same as my earlier place. Therefore, I am okay with it, no issues at all. I hope again you understand how we analyze its relevance in terms of decision making chapter. Another key aspect that we need to bear in mind from a cost analysis perspective with regard to relevant costs is in general. Cost can be analyzed into the variability, the fixed component. So there is a variable cost and a fixed cost. Variable cost obviously would be considered as relevant because suppose you are at the moment manufacturing 50,000 units in your plant and you intend to manufacture another 10,000 because a new order has been placed by a new customer. The extra cost, the variable cost that you have been incurring for every unit that you manufacture. Let us assume you have to spend on variable cost 40 rupees. And this 40 will have to be incurred by you even for the extra 10,000 units that you need to now make and supply. Correct? So those 10,000 units into 40 rupees, 4 lakh rupees of variable cost you have to incur. There is no doubt about it. But then, when you were manufacturing earlier 50,000 units, obviously in your plant you would not have had only fixed, variable cost. You would have had a portion of fixed cost also, and fixed cost typically would remain fixed within a range of output. Now, if you have been able to recover your fixed cost out of your earlier production, well, whether you recover or not, the fixed cost has been incurred for you to help you manufacture those 50,000 units plus something more. Let's assume that the fixed cost that you have incurred is 2 lakh rupees to set up the plant, and that helps you generate up to 60,000 units. You are currently at 50,000 units. Now you got a special order for 10,000, correct? Now, for making the extra 10,000 units, are you required to incur any extra fixed cost? No. Be very clear. Irrespective of whether you manufacture the extra 10,000 or not, the original fixed cost of 2 lakhs has still got to be incurred. There is no doubt about it. It doesn't change because of the extra 10,000 that you are now going to manufacture. Therefore, why would that be considered as relevant. It would be something which is absolutely irrelevant. So what do we understand through this? Think by pausing. The answer is existing fixed costs would be completely irrelevant from a decision making perspective when we look at new alternatives, unless if you have to shift to a particular alternative and that alternative demands you to spend some extra fixed cost, then that extra fixed cost component becomes relevant. For example, while we made an assumption that 2 lakhs of fixed cost was incurred to help you manufacture up to 60,000 units, then it becomes irrelevant. But then now if the question were to tell you that to manufacture that extra 10,000, you need to actually incur an extra fixed cost of 28 rupees. This 28, if you analyze, is relevant only if you choose to manufacture the extra 10,000. If you choose not to, this 28 need not be spent, and therefore this 28 becomes relevant from a decision making perspective. So any extra fixed cost, if required to be spent to help us move on with the alternative, would certainly be considered as relevant, else it will be completely irrelevant. Take another example. We took an example earlier which was a surplus capacity from a output perspective. The same surplus capacity can be also analyzed from the labor perspective. Sometimes you might find that you have employed laborers and you have to quantify a number. Let's assume 1 lakh labor hours available with you to execute jobs. That's the maximum capacity you can go to. So what does it imply when I say you have a labor capacity of 1 lakh hours, meaning they are paid for working till 1 lakh hours, correct? But then the current productivity levels is utilizing them only to the extent of 85,000 labor hours. Now, this clearly implies or gives a signal to you 15,000 hours, which is nothing but 1 lakh hours full capacity minus the utilization, which is 85,000. Unutilized portion is still available without any extra cost. Correct? Effectively, something like they are idle. So you could still utilize them. Now, if a question is going to ask you, a customer is approaching you to manufacture something, raw material cost will have to be incurred. Now, would that be relevant? Of course, yes, because you have to purchase the raw material. Labor cost, the new job requires, for example, 15,000 hours. Now, would this 15,000 hours that you have be relevant? Certainly not. Why? Whether the new job is undertaken or not, the 15,000 hours is already paid for. It may remain in the form of an idle laborer. So, irrespective whether you have the new job or not, that has been paid for, and therefore it is again irrelevant to the decision making process. Now, slightly change it. For example, the question tells you that at the moment the labor utilization is 100% complete. So, entire 1 lakh hours has been utilized. Now, there is a new order that is coming to you, and it is quite difficult for you to spot the required talent from the market, or there is shortage of availability of talent in the market. Okay. Now, what do? You are left with no option but to probably siphon off or divert a part of your existing labor requirements to the new job, provided it is lucrative. Now, suppose we say that your labor is going to be paid at the rate of 10 rupees per hour, and the new job requires 15,000 hours of labor. Now, since you don't get extra labor from the market and your capacity is fully utilized, the only way you can execute the order is what? Think about it by pausing. You will have to pull out your labor from some of the jobs that you are doing currently and divert them to execute the new job. That's the only one alternative available to you. Therefore, when you divert them, you will have to pay them for the 15,000 hours at the rate of 10 rupees, which means 1,50,000 rupees you have to pay them as a cost, which will be relevant to be incurred. 2. Is there something else which you can possibly consider as relevant? pause and think before I give you the solution. In our assumption, in our situation, the position was that our existing labor is already employed on some other job. So, in the job that they are currently executing, those 15,000 hours that they've invested, let's assume in job A that they would have done if now job Z has not been accepted. Now, is it not significant or relevant for us to find out our employees by working on job A, what would be the end result of job A if by completing job A the job would have given us a profit of 25,000 rupees. Okay. Now, what do you think will happen? This job, which would have yielded 25,000 rupees to us, pause and think what would have happened now because the staff has got diverted from that job to job Z. Our organization would have lost the ability to have earned this profit of 25,000 rupees. This is what is called also as opportunity cost. Very important from a decision making perspective. You have to consider always opportunity cost as part of incremental costs. Okay, it's extremely relevant. If my laborer had continued in the same old job A, I would have definitely earned 25,000 rupees. Now that opportunity I have lost. Why? That laborer has been diverted from there to job Z. Therefore, job Z must fetch me at least the 25,000 rupee of profit. Pause and think when I say at least 25,000, is that all? The answer is it will be in addition to the 1.5 lakh rupees of labor cost that I am paying them on the new job Z. So effectively when I cost job Z, I must be able to recover the direct material cost incurred for the job as well as the 1.5 lakh rupees, which is nothing but 15,000 labor hours into 10 rupees per labor hour, which I pay my employees, plus the opportunity cost of 25,000 rupees calculated as the loss of profit from the earlier job A, which has been sacrificed by diverting the laborer from there to job Z. So we need to bear this in mind very clearly. Now, if if our plant had not been working at full capacity, what did we see? We did not encounter this issue of opportunity loss because they are already available, effectively idling, could be utilized for this particular activity. The labor cost itself becomes irrelevant because they are already being paid over there. Correct? And there is also not going to be any opportunity loss because they don't execute any job. Again, this tries to clarify to us how the same point becomes relevant in a particular scenario, becomes irrelevant in another scenario. Take another example with regard to materials and analyze their relevance with regard to decision making. Now let's assume that in our business we are procuring raw material A, for example, to execute our jobs. Now suddenly we get a new customer order for which we need to procure some raw materials. And let's assume it is raw material A that we need as well as raw material B also that we need and raw material C as well. Okay. Now, with regard to raw material A, it is something that we are already usually procuring and which if it gets over or utilized will get replaced automatically through the replenishment process because that's a normal item that is being used. Now, in the new job that I have to execute, when I have to look at the relevant cost, suppose the new job requires 10,000 units of raw material A to execute the job. It is quite possible that because of the fact that this raw material A is regularly being used by me, I might already be holding a stock of raw material A with me. Let's assume, for example, I have the entire 10,000 units as a stock lying with me, which has already been purchased. Okay. Therefore, from a relevant cost perspective, should I assume now whether this 10,000, which has already been purchased and therefore is a historical cost, is irrelevant? It should be analyzed differently. For executing the current job, this particular raw material would have to be procured from the market if it had not existed, and therefore I will have to look at the current replacement value of these 10,000 units and consider this as a relevant cost in my decision making to execute the new job. Hopefully that point is clear. I repeat, we will have to consider the replacement value of raw material A because it is something that is being regularly used and therefore will be replenished on a frequent basis. Now let's look at, for example, raw material B and analyze it. Let's make an assumption that this raw material B, which is generally not required by us, but still we seem to be having stock of raw material B with us. What is the reason we have stock of raw material B available with us? For example, in the past we had some orders coming in from some other customers for which incidentally we needed raw material B, and whatever we had procured to satisfy those orders, after completing the job, excesses have remained with us. So we have basically purchased something in excess. Now, that raw material B, which we are having with us, cannot be utilized for any other purpose. We don't use it for any other purpose other than that particular job. Now, what do? That particular raw material B, we have 5,000 units of that stock with us. Are we supposed to consider the cost incurred to procure that raw material B earlier? Let's say we paid 50,000 rupees to procure it at the rate of 10 rupees each. Would that be relevant now? Think about it by pausing. Now look at it this way. What did I mention to you? Raw material B has no other utility. Therefore, if the decision to manufacture the new product which requires raw material B is not taken, then what is our position? Whatever we have invested in raw material B is a complete waste, that 50,000. It's down the drain, correct? Now, by manufacturing this product, what is going to happen? Nothing. The historical cost remains historical only. It is not a regular product and therefore we can't look at the replacement value and all, correct? But then there is one possibility. Suppose we were to say that now in our case we have assumed that it has no utility. Therefore it can never be sold in the market. Nothing can be done. It only has to be disposed of. Now, if it has to be disposed of and the activity of disposing is going to cost us 3,800 rupees, okay, I repeat, the raw material B has no utility, it has no resale market, okay, it only has to be disposed of because we have no other utility for it, okay. Now, if we have to dispose it of, we need to spend a 3,800 rupees towards disposing of that item. Now think about it very carefully whether the 3,800 becomes relevant or irrelevant from a decision making perspective. Hopefully you would have paused and analyzed. Now, if I do not undertake the activity of manufacturing the new product, then compulsorily I would have had to dispose of the raw material B by spending 3,800. Now, by undertaking the manufacturing of the new product where I need raw material B, I don't have to dispose it of. Therefore, I have saved 3,800 rupees. And this will certainly be impacting my relevance with regard to decision making exercise. Since I have saved 3,800, that could very well be reduced when I expect a new quote or when I quote to the new customer from a cost perspective. I hope it is clear. I repeat that 3,800 which I would have had to spend if I had to dispose of the raw material B need not be incurred because those materials are now going to be used in my new product and therefore the 3,800 which is disposal cost is saved completely and therefore I can give that benefit in my current decision making process. We saw when we were actually trying to sell a plant and machinery as scrap value, that was an opportunity cost, the benefit lost. Here it is actually a cost that I would have incurred is being saved. It is the other way around in this example, correct? Now take the example of raw material C. Raw material C, we are holding with us 3,000 units and we need 3000 units for the new product of raw material C. Now these 3000 units were procured at 6 rupees a unit, which is 18,000 rupees. So already spent, which is historic and therefore is irrelevant. I'm sure you would have decided about that. Now let's tweak the example to analyze whether this becomes relevant. Raw material C, for example, is something that we say has no utility but still for us, but still has a market outside and can be sold in the market outside at the rate of 2 rupees per unit. Therefore, my 3000 units could be sold at into 2 per unit. 6000 rupees I could have fetched by selling it in the market if I had not utilized this particular raw material in producing my new output, the new product. Therefore, when I have to actually consider my decision making activity, my historical cost of 18,000, which was 3000 units of raw material C multiplied by 6 per unit, which I paid for, is irrelevant. But then, because I decided to manufacture the new product by utilizing this raw material, I have lost the opportunity of earning 3000 units into 2 rupees, which I could have fetched by selling the raw material in the market. 6000 rupees I have lost, and therefore it becomes relevant from a decision making perspective. Well, with this, I hope quite a few examples have been cited to you from an analytical perspective as to what would be relevant, what would be irrelevant. There are umpteen different iterations that can be done and provided to you, but I guess as students of a professional course and that to CA course, that too again at the final level, you as student must be given enough freedom for you to analyze and be more creative, hopefully break your head, bang your head against the wall to try and understand this a little better by picking up the problems and solving. Wishing you all the best and try to solve all problems relating to product mix, pricing decisions, etc. Hopefully, in product mix, you will just have to bear one more aspect in mind before I close out. Maybe a few points I'll just touch before we close out. The fact that there could be what is the ideal combination of products that we manufacture. If we are manufacturing 4 different products A, B, C, D, what is that optimal ratio in which we manufacture such that not such that what should be that optimal mix? Obviously, in economics, we have learned any firm intends to operate only at that level where the profit maximization objective is met with, and that is the zone or the point at which TR, which is total revenue, will be the maximum and TC will be the least. So you could say the gap between the TR and the TC, let me put it that way. The gap between the TR and the TC, when I say TR and TC, it's the totals, okay? That should be the maximum, not the per unit revenues and the per unit costs. Now, if you have to achieve this from this chapter perspective, you have to bear in mind that possibly some key factors can also be given to you. When I say key factor, it is also referred to as a limiting factor, meaning in real life. For example, when you take your examination, are you not given only 3 hours? So what is the time? What is the most restricting factor there? Time, 3 hours. How productive are you going to remain within 3 hours? So what we find is when you are in the manufacturing activity, maybe that direct labor hours could be something which is not available in a free way, and therefore is available only in a restricted manner. So there is a shortage of supply of labor. Then we say labor is what is your key factor or your limiting factor. Possibly you could have a question which states raw material supply will be done only on a regulated basis. Therefore, since raw material supply is not available freely, it becomes a critical or a key or a limiting factor for us. Now, what is the significance of this key, critical or limiting factor? Generally, in your marginal costing that you've learned in intermediate as part of CVP analysis, you have understood one thing, that when we decide, when we need to take a decision to decide which product to manufacture or produce, we go ahead by choosing that alternative or that product where the uh, contribution tends to be the maximum per unit. So if product A gives you 50 rupees per unit as a contribution, while product B gives you 40 rupees per unit as contribution, then we would go ahead and say, please produce A because it gives you 10 rupees extra contribution. This is how we decide. But the point to be borne in mind when you have a key factor or a limiting factor is that the contribution will have to be measured not at the unit level but at the key factor level. For example, in our case, if direct labor hours is assumed to be the limiting factor and we make an assumption that the question states product A requires 5 units of labor for every unit to be completed. Okay, 5 hours of labor for every unit of output. Therefore, if one unit of A gives 50 rupees of contribution in our example, per hour of labor, the contribution will be 50 rupees for a unit divided by 5 hours of labor for a unit. Therefore, 10 rupees per labor hour is a contribution being made towards product A. Similarly, for product B, the question states that every unit of product B to be manufactured requires 2 hours of labor, meaning thereby that the contribution per labor hour in the case of B would be 40 rupees per unit of B contribution divided by 2 labor hours per unit of B, resulting in 20 rupees per hour. Now we find that the equations have got reversed. When we looked at the per unit of profitability, it is A that we signaled for, saying A provides 50 rupees per unit vis-a-vis 40 rupees for B, therefore A is preferred destination. But now when we look at it from a limiting factor perspective, we notice that A is no longer the preferred option. It is B which is the preferred option because it is B which contributes to in a very significant way relatively higher compared to A with respect to per limiting factor. This concept will be used in a very big way when you need to decide what products are to be manufactured in what ratio if limiting factors are given in the question. Possibly a very elementary level of LPP linear programming will also have to be involved. One question is given in your study material. I hope you will be able to understand the logic of it. When you look at the X and Y axis, this key limiting factor should be able to communicate to you. So the conditions will have to be drawn up and solved. Now, in furtherance to whatever we have discussed, this topic discusses essentially decision making at the final level, but since it has a significant component in the form of CVP analysis, the study material does not contain the basics of marginal costing in terms of how do you arrive at a contribution, how would you arrive at, for example, the profit or loss position, the break-even point, the margin of safety, the PV ratio, etc., etc., as they have been covered as part of the CA intermediate syllabus in costing. I am taking the privilege of actually forwarding separately another audio file to you, which will discuss at length about the basics of marginal costing, which is involved at the intermediate level. So you could just use it just in case you need to solve some problems in depth about CVP, wherein you need the basic formula to be able to find out the margin of safety at the break-even point, break-even sales in quantity or in value, etc., etc. So you may want to use that file as well, which will be sent along with this as part of your decision-making chapter. With this, the chapter comes to a closure. You will be given enough time to solve problems, and I wish you best of luck.